there everybody, Helen with you today. Welcome to the first part of our 3-part corner to corner series. Today, just to get you started, we're going to be looking at how to read a corner to corner pattern, what's involved, just get you familiar with it so it doesn't look as intimidating, and we're also going to master the corner to corner stitch. So during the course of these 3 sessions, we're actually going to be creating this gorgeous cushion. So part 1, like I say, we're looking at the instructions. Oh sorry, it dropped. And we're also going to master the corner to corner stitch, if you can see that. So I'll be showing you how to do that. This is actually the back of one of those cushions. My nieces have asked for a pink version, so I'll be showing you how to work this and also reduce for a square. When you do a square, we're reducing at both sides at the same time. So that's fine. So we'll be working increases for the first half and reductions for the second half. And then in part 2, we'll be looking at how to actually make the front of the pillow. So this is where the picture section comes into it. It's a really simple pattern, really cute, but there's only the 2 colours. So worst case I think is you've got 5 different colours going on one row, like blue, white, blue, white, blue, or whatever colours you choose to use. But don't worry about that because I'll take you through it in its entirety. So part 2 will work actually the picture, and I'll show you the basics and get you going on that. And then in part 3 we're going to look at rectangles, because usually when you make afghans and that sort of thing, they are rectangles rather than squares. So I'll be showing you how to do a rectangle with corner to corner. Not as difficult as what you might think, but we'll get there when we get there in part 3. And during that section, I haven't got it with me at the moment, but I'll run through how to make a very simple corner to corner scarf or infinity cowl that I made using some mandala yarn. So shall we get started and start looking at the instructions and the pattern for a corner to corner? So come and join me at my workstation and we'll go through this in more depth. Okay, so here we have our crochet pattern. Now I do just need to put a photograph of the cushion when it comes back from the photographer on top of this one, but the PDF will have that included for you. So that's page 1. Page 2, you can see we have a list of materials. Now generally what a corner to corner pattern doesn't do is tell you how much yarn you need to make the project. Now this is because of tension, and also because there's a few ways of doing corner to corner. So you could use double crochet, which is the traditional method and the one that I'm going to show you today, or you could use half double crochets, and instead of chaining 3 you chain 2, but obviously that makes the project smaller. So generally what happens is, if you can see, if I come in just a little bit here in the pattern notes section, it says to work out how much yarn you will need to do a sample swatch and then measure how much yarn you used per corner to corner block, multiplying that by the number of blocks of that colour and adding some extra for the tails to be worked in at the end. Now what I usually do is just add half a skein, unless it's a big project, and then I'll add a whole skein just to make sure that I've got enough to accommodate the tails. So this is this pattern here. Also, if I go up to my abbreviation section, the only abbreviations in there that I have are the colours and the fasten off. So you can see as well that I have a rough gauge for this pattern. So to get a pillow that fits a 16-inch pillow form, the gauge swatch you'll get 2 by 2 inches is 3 blocks by 3 blocks. So this pattern is written in US terms, when you work a corner to corner, they are always reversible. So when you carry the yarn, remember you need to work over that, but I'll show you that in video 2. You need to work over any yarn that you're carrying so that it doesn't, you don't have loose ends and such on the back. And the only other point to note is on this particular pattern, I have noted that colour charts and stitch totals are listed under the picture graph on the next page. If there is a larger graph that can be printed off, it'll be provided as a second document. So just to quickly run through the materials, you'll need number 4 weight yarn in 2 colours. So I'm using Karen Simply Soft. I use that for both the blue version and the version that I'm making, the pink version, with you guys. And you'll require 1 skein of each colour, 5mm hook, stitch markers. I've put that the recommended because obviously you guys are new to corner to corner, just to make sure that you know where your first and your last stitch are. Scissors, tapestry needle, and a 16-inch pillow foam to actually put inside the cushion when you're finished. Now the next page is where you have the graph. So this is the graph of what we're making. So you can see how just cute and adorable that bunny is there. Now when you work corner to corner, the instructions are always written from the bottom right all the way up to the top left. So you'll work, generally speaking, you'll work down for the first one, then up for the second row, down for the third row, up for the fourth row. Now with the graph and the instructions, there is a right side and a wrong side. So the way the picture looks here, that is the right side of your work. But I'll run through that with you in video 2 and show you how to make sure that you know exactly which side's which. You can see as well, we have our colour count here. So in the background colour that you're using, we have 330 stitches on the front. The bunny colour, which is purple on the graph, but I did it white in my blue version, and I'm going to be doing light pink in the pink version, we have 199 squares. So we know how many squares we've got, so we can work out our gauge for our yarn requirements. This section here shows you the written instructions. Sorry, I'll just come in. Shows you the written instructions. So you can see we have row numbers. It tells us whether it's the right side or the wrong side. Now that will become important when we start reducing to kind of make that last corner. And it tells you how many squares you should have on each row. Now corner to corner is quite rhythmical in that while you're increasing, you always add 1 square for each row. So you know A, which row you're on, and B, whether you've done that row right. So whilst you're learning, what I would recommend you do is do 1 row and double check that your square count's right. If you don't have the right square count, chances are you've just missed a stitch somewhere. And these arrows here, sometimes they're on the end, but you generally have some indication as to which way on the graph you're working. So you can see there, the arrow that points to the left, we're actually working, oh, where are we? There we are, down. When it points to the right, we're working up. So we're working down when it points left, and we're working up the graph when it points right. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, there are a couple of ways of writing the instructions for a corner to corner, and I have supplied both in the PDF and on the blog post, because this is an educational video as well, so I did want to supply both for you. Basically, these are the written instructions. So it physically writes out colour A and how many squares you do. And then when you come to do multiple colours, it'll say colour A, how many squares, colour B, how many squares, and then we're back to colour A, and it'll tell us how many squares we've got at the end. With our colour block instructions, they are pretty much the same, except they're more of a visual representation. So that was row 9 I just went through with you. So if we look at row 9 on this one, you can see we've still got the arrow. If I come in, we've still got the arrow that tells us which way we're working on the graph, whether we're going up and to the right or down and to the left. And it tells us the row number and whether we're right side or wrong side. Then this is where the colour block comes in. So we have 3 white squares, 4 purple squares and 2 white squares. So that makes our row. So instead of it being represented as colour A for 3, colour B for 4, colour A for 2, it's just more of a visual. Now sometimes people do prefer this because there is more of a visual for you, but it is more ink. You might find that some designers, when they put their patterns up, they'll only include one or the other type of instruction. Very few of them will include all, but it's obviously, if you have a preference, it's always good to check which instruction method they are giving you or whether they're giving you both. Corner. Sometimes it'll say corner somewhere in the instructions, and it'll do that both in the written, and if I turn it over, it'll do it, oh there we are, in the colour block. Now on this particular one, you can see I have used 2 different methods just to show you the difference for the purposes of this video. So corner and reduce from the left and the right here are the same thing. So that tells you where you reach the corner, and then you have to start reducing in order to make the square. We will get to that. Honestly, it's not as bad as it sounds, but I just wanted to point out that this is where our corners are. So if it tells you to reduce from one side or the other, or both, or if it just says corner, then you need to be looking at the graph, double checking which way is the right way on your work, and getting it clear in your head that that's where the corner goes. And that is pretty much all there is to a corner to corner pattern that I think I need to go through with you. You can see here we've just got lots of white columns. Basically that's just 15 white squares. And on our PDF version, I do include instructions on how to put the pillow together. The photographs are for our B pillow, but it's put together exactly the same, so I've just included those in the PDF for those who haven't put together a pillow before. And then finally we just have all of our links. Sarah and I like to put that in all of our patterns. You will find it somewhere. Occasionally it's at the beginning, but more often than not it's right at the end, and it's just different places that you can find us. So for instance, if you've got one of our problems and you're having a little bit of an issue, you could always join our Facebook group and say, hey, I'm working on this pattern, I'm stuck on this row, can somebody please give me a hand? If Sarah and I aren't around, which to be fair is very unusual, we have some lovely moderators and there's some fabulous people in the group that will also come and help you out. So let's get started with our corner to corner back and start mastering this stitch. Okay, so for this one I'm actually going to use Karen Simply Soft. My nieces have requested that I make them a pink version, so I'm going to do the back of the pillow and the background in the darker pink, and I'm going to have a light pink bunny with a little white tail. So we won't need this pink until video 2. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to run through with you how we make the corner to corner stitch. So for the purposes of this video, the rest of this video, we're going to work a plain back for the cushion. So what this is going to do is just make you a pro at the stitch before we even consider bringing in bobbins and changing colours and all that malarkey. So we need to get a slip stitch under our hook as we would ordinarily, and we need to chain 3. Once you've chained your 3, what you need to do is just nip that third one so you know which one it is. Basically you're just using it to mark which one the third one is, and then you'll chain another 3. Then in that stitch that you've got a hold of, we're going to double crochet, and then we'll double crochet into the next chain and double crochet into that last chain. So that's our first square made, our first block. Now when you're following the pattern, each one of these equates to 1 square. So that's what 1 square represents. You chain 3 and your 3 double crochets. But because we're doing the back, we don't need to worry about the bunny rabbit colours at the moment. So then we'll turn our work and we'll chain 3 again. We do this on the first stitch of every row. We'll nip that chain 3, that third chain, sorry, and we'll chain another 3. Then we'll do a double crochet into that stitch that we've nipped, and a double crochet into each of the next 2. So then what we need to do is anchor this block that we've just made to the first block. So you've got your 3 double crochets there, and then you chain 3 on the end because we've turned it, remember. So we're going to insert our hook into that chain 3 space and literally slip stitch. Now as you can see, that anchors it quite nicely. That block isn't moving anywhere. So then we need to chain 3 and then do 3 double crochets into that same chain 3 space. And then we turn our work. And because this is the first stitch of the row, or the first block of the row, we're going to chain 3, put our finger and nip that third loop so we know which one it is, and then chain another 3. Then we're going to double crochet into that stitch that we've nipped, and we'll double crochet into each of the following chains. And then we need to anchor this stitch. So we're going to look for that chain 3 space from the previous row and slip stitch into it so that we're anchoring that block. Then we'll chain 3 and do 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. And then we need to anchor this block to the next block. So we look for that chain 3 space and we'll slip stitch onto it. Then we'll chain 3 and do 3 double crochets. Now you can see for row 3 we have 3 blocks. For row 2 we had 2 blocks, and for row 1 we had 1 block. So that's how we know we're doing it right, and it's also a good measure to keep track of what row you're on until you start reducing. So this is row 3. We need to turn our work, and for the first stitch of the row we need to chain 3, nip that 3rd one, and then chain 3. Then we'll double crochet into the stitch that we nipped, and we'll do a double crochet into the next chain and a double crochet into that last chain, and then we're going to anchor it into the next chain 3 space. So you can see we've got quite a nice right angle there going on, and when we anchor it, if I just take that slip stitch out, so we've just worked this one, this is the 3rd stitch from the previous row, so when we anchor it, that stitch is going nowhere. So if I just redo that slip stitch, so I just want to make sure as well that you guys can see where that chain 3 is. It's always on the end, so as you look at your work from the row below, you'll have 3 double crochets and then you chain 3. We always work into this chain 3 space. We're not working into any double crochets, only the chain 3 space. So that's on the end of each of those steps or blocks. So remember, it's only the first block that starts slightly differently. After that we just chain 3 and work 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. And then we'll anchor it to the next chain 3 space, and we'll chain 3, and we'll do 3 double crochets in that same chain 3 space, and then we'll anchor it to that last stitch, that last chain 3, with a slip stitch, chain 3, and then 3 double crochets. Oops. And then that was the last stitch of row 4 that you can see there. So then we'll turn our work. So this is the last row I'll go through with you. So we're turning our work, and we're going to chain 3 because this is the first stitch of the row. We're going to nip that 3rd stitch and we're going to chain another 3. Then we're going to work a double crochet into that 3rd stitch that we nipped, and a double crochet into each of the next 2 chains. And then we're going to anchor by slip stitching into the next chain 3 space, and chain 3, and then 3 double crochets. And then slip stitch into the next chain 3 space, chain 3, and then 3 double crochets. And then we'll slip stitch into the next chain 3 space, and we'll chain 3, 3 double crochets, and then we'll anchor it to the next chain 3 space with a slip stitch, and chain 3 and 3 double crochets, and that finishes off that row. Now I want you to repeat that process until you have 23 rows completed. And now remember, you'll know you have 23 rows completed because you'll have 23 steps up your work. So remember, the first stitch of the row, chain 3, nip that third stitch, chain another 3, and then put a double crochet in the stitch that you nipped and a double crochet in each of the next 2 chains along. Then you're going to anchor it to the next chain 3 space that you have available, and then you're going to chain 3 and do 3 double crochets in that same chain space, and then we'll anchor it to the next one, chain 3, 3 double crochets, anchor it to the next chain 3 space, and we'll work that way all the way down until you have 23 rows, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so you can see here I've got my 23 rows of the back of this pillow, and the reason I know that is because I have 23 bumps. Now if you've counted your rows going up and you've got 23 rows but less than 23 of these steps, it means that somewhere along the line what you've done is you've probably anchored one of your stitches and then forgot you need to make a stitch. So you need to go back and have a little bit of a look and see if you can work out where that happened. Okay, so I've got 23 steps. Shall we just check that? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So now I can start reducing so that we get the corner coming in at the other side. Now this actually isn't going to be as complicated as what you think it might be. If you just let me zoom in a bit, we'll get started. So you're a pro increasing now. In order to decrease this first step here, we need to slip stitch all the way up to that chain 3 space. So I'll just slip stitch into that, and then instead of doing the chain 6, we simply chain 3 and work our 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. Are you being nosy, Hugo? Sorry for the pitter-patter, and that's my dog. So then we need to anchor this stitch here to the next block. So we're going to slip stitch into the next chain 3 space just to anchor that. Chain 3 and then 3 double crochets into that chain 3 space. And we're going to do that all the way along the row, so we're not doing the starting the row with a chain 6 anymore because we're not increasing. Instead, when we decrease, we're just going to slip stitch up those first stitches on the side that we're decreasing. But because we're doing a square, we are decreasing on both sides. So when I get to the end of this row, I'll show you what we do there. Okay, so I'm on to the last stitch of row 24. So I'm going to anchor that. I'm going to do my chain 3 and my 3 double crochets as we would ordinarily. When we're increasing, we would ordinarily anchor to this very last chain 3 space here and work our last block to continue to grow that side, but we're reducing on this side, we're reducing on both sides. So we're literally just going to do our slip stitch to anchor it. We're going to turn our work and then we're going to slip stitch up the side to that chain 3 space like we did at the other end. And then that creates the second corner. And then we'll chain 3, 3 double crochets in the same chain 3 space, sorry. And then we'll anchor that block to the next chain 3 space with a slip stitch. Chain 3 and 3 double crochets in that same chain 3 space. Now we're going to do that for every row, so it'll get smaller and smaller and that last corner will start coming in for you. I'll meet you back when I've got 3 stitches left, so the last 2 rows. See you soon. Okay, so as you can see, I've slip stitched up the side for the first stitch of every row, working up, and I'm getting to that nice corner point now. Just a couple more rows to go, so I'll do the last stitch in this row. I find decreasing quite therapeutic, because you'll notice that when you're increasing, your stitch count matches your rows, but when you decrease, actually the number of stitches you do tells you how many rows you've got left. So you know, as they get shorter and shorter, you're getting closer and closer to the end. Right, so I'm starting my next row and I'm slip stitching. Sorry, I should have showed you that. There we go. I'm going to slip stitch up that first block all the way up to the chain 3 space at the top. There we go. And then I'll chain 3 and 3 double crochets in that same chain 3 space. And then we'll anchor this stitch to the next one with a slip stitch, chain 3 and 3 double crochets. And then that's the last stitch of the row, so then we're going to anchor that with the slip stitch, turn our work, and you'll notice that we've only got 1 stitch to make on this row, so we're going to slip stitch up the side of the set that we've just made, chain 3 and 3 double crochets in that same chain 3 space, and then we'll anchor it to that top stitch, and you can see that has created the corner for us. So then if I just grab my scissors, we can snip the yarn and fasten off, and that creates, if I come out a little bit more for you. The back of our cushion. So this should be just a little bit shorter than 16 inches. You can sew in the ends at this point if you would like to, and it just keeps it tidy. So that's it for the back of the pillow. So if you join me in the next video, I'll be showing you how to actually create the bunny rabbit and use your pattern in order to make this. So this one's going to be simple. It's literally 2 colours. There's not a lot of bobbins or balls of yarn all attached to your work at the same time that you need. So it is a good one for a start off. But it will show you all the basics. If you would like to add a pom-pom tail, by all means, feel free. This is your pillow after all. So yes, so that's coming up in video 2. If you have enjoyed what you've learnt so far, it would be really great if you could subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell icon, and that will allow you to be notified every time we update our channel with a new video. Basically this year we'll be having quite a few updates, so there will be a lot going on here this year, and we'll hope to see you soon. Bye.